Hello, James Patterson here. In this video I'm going to show you a really simple, easy way to create really intricate selections and cutouts like our subject here. You can see this is our model here against her original backdrop, and what I've done is cut her out using a combination of selection tools in Photoshop and dropped her into this plain blurred backdrop to come up with something like this. And this is really simple and easy to do. So let's get cracking. We'll go back to our starting image here, and the first thing I want to do is make a rough selection of my subject here, and there's a really quick and easy way to do this. We can go to select and we can choose subject, and Photoshop will analyze the image and determine what the subject is and select it for us. And this gives us a great starting point to improve the selection. So you can see here, if we zoom in a little bit, how we've got a pretty good selection around the head here, and over on the body here we've picked up an area of the background in the bottom left corner here that we don't want, and also a little bit under the arm here. So what I'll do now is grab the quick selection tool from the Photoshop toolbar over here. Then I can hold Alt and Paint to subtract areas from my initial selection. You can see how the tool snaps onto the edges as I paint. So I can use the left and right square bracket keys on my keyboard to resize my tooltip there, and then hold Alt and then just Paint to subtract those areas. So now my selection is a little bit better, but it's still rather hard-edged and jagged. But we can address that next by using the select and mask command. So I'm going to go to select, select and mask. And this opens up select and mask in a new dialog box. This is a hugely powerful tool for making really complex cutouts and selections. So you can see here how my initial selection here is looking really rather horrible. You can see we've got this nasty jagged edge around the portrait here. Now when you're in select and mask, it's a good idea to go to the view options here first and choose a view. So you can see we've got lots of different views here, and I've gone for the on black view here because that gives me the most contrast between that original slightly grayish backdrop and the black overlay that we've added. So this clearly shows me any problem areas in my selection edge. So now with that done, I'm going to begin to improve the edge. And the first thing we can do is up the radius here. Let's perhaps bring that to about 5 or 6 or 7. And so that improves the area along the edge by pushing the area of refinement outwards. If I check this show edge box here, you can see how by increasing the radius here, if I push it up further, you can see how we're able to increase the area of refinement along that edge. Now, rather than trying to up the radius to include all of that intricate detail between the hairs, what we can do instead is use a fairly low radius here and then start to paint in our own radius using the refine radius brush, which you can find over to the left here in the toolbar. In fact, it's called the Refine Edge brush tool. So we'll grab that from the toolbar over here, and then I can use the left and right square bracket keys to resize my brush tip again, and I can start to paint along the edge like this. In fact, to begin with, I'm just going to uncheck my show edge view here to bring me back to my view of the image, and you can see clearly how this brush really improves my selection edge. If I just paint over the hair here, you can see I'm just trying to include all the little details, all those little bits of background between the hairs, and you can see how immediately we get a much better, smoother, more intricate result around the edges of the subject. So I'll do the same over this side of the head here, and quickly whiz over the top part of the head as well. So now with that done, I'm going to check show edge again, just to check the edges of my radius here to see exactly where I've painted. And now this shows me clearly whether there are any areas of the backdrop that I haven't included in my radius. So I can see I can paint over the hair on this side here, just to include all those little bits of backdrop between the hairs, and perhaps over here as well. This is looking slightly messy. Now with that done, I'll uncheck show edge once more. Let's just zoom out slightly and we'll see our whole image here, and that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to go down to the output options down here, and I'm going to choose to output to a layer mask and hit OK. So now we've got a pretty decent cutout here. If we zoom in close, you can see we've got our checkerboard backdrop, which shows us that this area is transparent, and we're ready to drop our portrait here into our other image. So I'm going to grab the move tool. I'll click and drag my image here up to the tab of the other image, then still holding the mouse button down, I can drag in and release to copy the portrait over, and I'll position it over to the side over here. If I want to resize it, I could hit Command or Control and T, and then perhaps just make it slightly larger here like this, and I'm happy with that. Now if we zoom in slightly closer, we can have a better look at our selection edge, and although it's looking pretty good, it's still a little bit messy around the edges here. I think we can make it better. So what I'll do now is bring up my layers panel here. I can go to Window, Layers to access this, and I'm going to right click on the layer mask thumbnail here. You can see this is my layer mask here. So all the areas in white are visible, all the areas in black are hidden. So I can right click this layer mask thumbnail and go to select and mask again. And this re-enters the command. And often it's worth running a cutout through the select and mask command twice just to get a better result. Now this time what I'm going to do is use a different setting here. I'm going to go to the output settings here, and I'm going to check decontaminate colors. And notice around the edges of the hair here, what this does is bleed in some of the other colors from the hairs into those edges. And that's perhaps slightly too strong. I can tweak the amount slider here to change it. I think somewhere around about 70% will work for us here. Now when we use decontaminate colors, our output automatically changes to new layer with layer mask, and that's because this is a destructive edit. So we're actually adding color to the pixels around the edges of the hair here. So by default we get a new layer with a layer mask here just to preserve our original cutout layer. So I'll hit OK to apply that, and now you can see we get a second cutout layer here, and our first cutout layer is hidden, and now we get a much better, smoother result around the edges of the hair. And if I go around all of the edges here, you can see I'm really happy with my cutout now. That's looking really rather good. So I always find it's good to finish off with a tonal effect on top of everything whenever you're making a composite image like this. So I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut, Command or Control plus Shift Alt and E. That's Command on the Mac, Control on a PC plus Shift Alt and E, and that will merge a copy of all of my layers below into one single layer there. You can see at the top of my layer stack. And really we can apply any tonal effect we like to this layer. I'm going to go to the Camera Raw filter here under the filter menu just to apply a quick profile effect. So within the Camera Raw filter here, I can go to the basic panel on the right and click on this little icon here to open up the profile browser, and we can go through a few different profiles just to add a slightly altered tonal effect on top of my image. So I could perhaps go for this modern 4 profile. Let's go for this one here. So I'll double click to apply that. I can tweak the amount here to change the strength of the effect. I'll bring it to around about there, I think, and then hit OK to apply. And that's my finished image. So there we go. That's how to create a really intricate, precise cutout using a combination of selection tools in Photoshop CC.